All right, so what does it actually mean to be a first-time home buyer? That's what we're going to cover in this video because there's a lot of misconceptions around who is eligible for specific first-time home buyer programs and programs that are actually available to everyone. You could have owned a home in the past and still be considered a first-time buyer. If you don't already know me, I'm Sean Herrero, a mortgage advisor in California who can lend in all 50 states. I've been doing this for over 23 years now, and my goal is to ensure that you avoid the sales and gimmicks of the mortgage industry because unfortunately, the mortgage industry is really good at telling you what you want to hear instead of telling you what's best for you. If you want to schedule a free one-on-one strategy session with me, you can click the link below to get on my calendar. Now let's jump into the video. Okay, so let's talk about being a first-time home buyer. There's a lot of misconceptions around this. You could have owned a home in the past and still be considered a first-time home buyer today. And there are loan programs that basically make people think that you have to be a first-time home buyer to use them, and you don't. And at the same time, there are first-time home buyer down payment assistance programs that make it sound like it's actually helping you when it could actually be hurting you. So let's start with who is considered a first-time home buyer. A first-time home buyer is considered somebody who has not owned a property within the last 3 years. And that's where that guideline comes in, stating that you could have owned real estate, but still be considered a first-time buyer. See, if you bought a home, then sold it, had been renting or living with family for the last 3 years, if you're going to buy again, you would be considered a first-time home buyer according to underwriting guidelines. That basically makes you eligible for any of the down payment assistance programs or first-time home buyer specific programs like Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac's 3% down programs. Another question I get a lot about being a first-time home buyer is, if I helped somebody else buy a house and on that mortgage and on title of the property or not on title of the property, am I considered a first-time home buyer because it's not my house? And the answer to that one would actually be no. Because you've purchased a property and are still owner of a property, that would preclude you from using first-time home buyer programs. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. See, a lot of times with that one, a lot of people think, oh, shoot, because I'm obligated to that mortgage and it shows on my credit report, they're going to count that in my debt to income ratio, which means that I'm going to qualify for less house if I can qualify at all. And that's not necessarily true. If you're in that situation and you can show that the other person that you helped co-sign for has been making the mortgage payments since the inception of the mortgage or for at least the last 12 months, from an account that your name is not on, then we can exclude that debt from your obligation. Now, you're still not considered a first-time buyer, but you don't have to count that debt into your debt-to-income ratio, which means that you can actually qualify for more. And these are all the things we look at when we go through pre-approvals to help people to figure out what programs they're eligible for. And like I mentioned earlier, not all programs that are considered first-time homebuyer programs actually are. FHA is a great example of that. With an FHA loan, you do not have to be a first-time home buyer. You just have to be in a position where you do not currently have an FHA loan in place. So let's say you bought your first home using conventional financing, and now you want to buy a home with 3.5% down, say a year later. You're going to keep your other property as an investment property and start to build your real estate portfolio. You could use FHA financing. And this year specifically, 2024, and I think this will continue into 2025, FHA loans have been amazing. The interest rates have been dramatically lower than conventional. The mortgage insurance costs are lower. The guidelines are more flexible. I put more people into FHA loans this year than I really have ever in the past. So don't think that you're only eligible for FHA if you're a first-time home buyer. That's not the case. Now let's get into down payment assistance programs because this is what people are really looking for when they're asking about what the benefits are of being a first-time home buyer. And I may be, of a different opinion than most on this, but I'm not a huge fan of the down payment assistance programs because they make it sound like someone's giving you money to help you out, when the reality is, in most cases, not all, whoever's providing the financing is actually making a lot of money off of giving you the money. So you're paying a lot more money to use somebody else's money. Here's an example of that. In California, there was a really popular program called the Dream for All program. The program was marketed as a down payment assistance program that would give you up to 20% of your purchase price, meaning you would not have mortgage insurance, and dramatically lowers your monthly payment. And those things are true. And everybody got really excited about that. But what everyone seemed to miss is that it was an equity share program, meaning that you would have to give up a percentage of the equity or the appreciation in the property when you pay off the loan. And you can't get out of that loan until you give them their share of equity and repay the 20% they gave to you. So let's take a $500,000 purchase price for an example. You would have a $400,000 mortgage and they give you $100,000 down. Let's say you go to refinance and there's been no true appreciation in the property yet. So the value of the property is still $500,000, just like it was when you purchased it. Well, if you wanted to refinance and take advantage of the rates going down, CalHFA would require you to pay back that $100,000, which means you actually wouldn't be eligible to refinance because a $400,000 mortgage plus the $100,000 you have to give back to them on a value of $500,000 means it's 100% financing. And there's no conventional loans that would allow that. The only reason you'd be refinancing is to get out of that CalHFA loan into a lower rate. So a lot of times these programs trap people people. And it doesn't mean it's a bad program. It just means it wasn't well explained. And then people feel like they're stuck, right? When rates go down and everyone's talking about refinancing and you go to do the same thing and you find out the hard way that the loan program that you were sold doesn't do what you thought it would, it doesn't feel good. So much of real estate is emotional, and that's really what I try to help people with, is looking at the emotional side and avoiding. I want you to feel the good part. I don't want you to feel the bad part. I want to help you avoid that. Another program that would cost you more money by way of interest instead of giving up equity is the Golden State Finance Authority's Platinum program. I hear about this one all the time from nurses, and it is a great program if you have to use it. If you truly have no money for a down payment, it is a good program, but I'm not of the opinion that it makes sense to buy a house if you truly don't have any money. You see, you have to plan for life, right? We want to have reserves. We want to have a savings account in place for anything that would happen to the home or to us personally. If we fall on a bad circumstance, we want to make sure that we're in a position to keep the house and not end up losing it. And so the way the Golden State Finance Authority's Platinum program works is they'll give you up to 5% of your purchase price towards down payment and closing costs. Well, I talked about an FHA loan earlier. They have an FHA loan, meaning you'd only need 3.5% down. You could use 3.5 of that 5% to cover the down payment, and then the other 1.5% to use towards your closing costs, which means you could virtually purchase a property with no money out of pocket. And that's how they sell the program. It sounds really good, right? Well, what they didn't tell you is that 3.5% they're giving you is done as a second mortgage on a 15-year fixed term. A 15-year fixed term has a much higher monthly payment than a 30-year fixed term because you have to pay off the loan so much quicker. And the interest rates on the first mortgage and the second mortgage are the same, and they're inflated because you have to use their program to use their money. So you actually end up paying a lot more in interest for a Golden State Finance Authority FHA loan and the second mortgage than you would for a conventional FHA loan. And that really brings me to what I feel is the best strategy for first-time home buyers or buyers in general. I really think it's great that you can get into a home with little money down. I actually am a fan of putting as little down as possible, knowing that the monthly payment is comfortable for you. Like I mentioned before, FHA, you do not have to be a first-time home buyer, and the interest rates for those programs have been dramatically lower than conventional loans right now. And you can put just 3.5% down, and we can always ask for a seller credit to be negotiated into your contract to cover your closing costs. That means you'd only come out of pocket 3.5% of your purchase price. And the alternative to that is using Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac's 3% down programs. These programs do the same thing. It does allow for you to get a seller credit to cover closing costs as well, minimizing your out-of-pocket expenses. So an example of that, using a $500,000 home, you only need $15,000 out of pocket to purchase a property, assuming that your real estate agent has negotiated in a seller credit to cover the additional costs. So as you can see, there's a lot of different options and a lot of different things we have to navigate. And that's why I always say mortgages should not be considered one size fits all. You have to look at your individual plan and figure out what's best for you, your plans for the property, and what your ultimate goals are in the lifestyle that you live. It's really important to me that people live life on their own terms, get to enjoy their life and not be house poor. I would never want anyone to get into a house that their monthly payment is too high, so they feel stuck, or they have no money left because they bought a house and something comes up and then they have financial hardship. We want to make sure you're excited and comfortable about it. And that's really my approach, is helping people figure out their personalized plan. We build personalized websites for every single client to ensure that they know exactly what their options are and to help them find their comfort zone in monthly payment and cash out of pocket. And once we know those two things, we put you in a position to go look for a home within your ideal price range. If you have any questions, feel free to comment below or reach out to me directly anytime. Like I said, I work all over the country and I can help you to build your personalized plan for your next home purchase. Thank you so much. Talk to you soon.